You can't.
Oh, you're fighting.
Hold on. Let's talk about. Let's just talk
yeah, because you're getting fired. Let's just move. Let's just get right into it. Okay.
I want to ask you guys something. So we'll just go with what he said. The C.J. Gardner-Johnson penalty on Deebo Samuel. How many yards did that account for? 15?
Yeah, 15 yards, I think.
What did they do on that drive?
They
scored. They scored a touchdown.
Yeah,
they scored a touchdown. How many yards did that wave to the 49ers fans? Which I can tell you every week when an NFL team is up, some player is waving to the NFL fans of the other team. How many yards did that account for?
Nothing.
Do you know how many tackles C.J. Gardner missed last week or yesterday?
I remember one. Yeah, I remember one.
He missed one. Do you know in the last 27 games as an active NFL player, what C.J. Gardner-Johnson, when he's on a team, do you know what the record is?
Tell me.
It's 22-5. It's 22-5. In those games, he's had 130 tackles, 3 sacks, and 10 interceptions. And where's the Lions' weakness at? Is it in the secondary?
Specifically at corner, but yeah, you're right.
And so do you think we need plays to be made in the secondary? Especially when you have Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, DJ Moore, and all the Packers wide receivers in your division? Do you think that's important to have a playmaker? Especially because, what was the Lions' strength in the playoffs? The ability to play 4 safeties. 4 safeties. They were not able to do that during the middle of the season, and that's why you saw them be able to control the center of the field against the 49ers in the first half and against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. On 3rd and goal against the LA Rams, late in the game, who was man-to-man on Cooper Kupp and ended up on a pass breakup? Please don't tell me it was C.J. Gardner-Johnson, because he doesn't make an impact on this team at all. Because it was a dot by Matthew Stafford, but he was right in position to make the play. You know what they had to do? Settle for a field goal. Settle for a field goal. Do you know what did Chris Godwin do against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Jack shit. Jack fucking shit. He didn't do anything. And you can bring up the stiff arm that Christian McCaffrey has. Yeah, that is what Christian McCaffrey does because he's the best NFL running back in the league. You can go back to week 1 when he was solo tackling Isaiah Pacheco one-on-one, and the Lions won that game. Oh, my goodness. But you know what? No, we don't need him. We can go find a better safety in the draft or the offseason to replace him in our already weak secondary. That's fine. But get rid of him because he waves and he creates distractions. That's how some players play. Sometimes you need a guy in your team that's not scared of anybody's not going to show. When you have a guy at Deebo Samuel who runs his mouth all game long, you know what it's useful to have? A player that'll be like, I don't give a fuck. And remember, Deebo, you're going to remember that the whole game, whether it works or not, that is how you take out the bullies in the NFL. And if every team would want to have a C.J. Gardner-Johnson, hate him all you want, but if he does that, he'd wave into the crowd in San Francisco, you're going to love him. Everybody loved that he flipped the ball to Baker. You didn't hear anybody complain about that. You know why? Because they won. If he would have been waving to the crowd, it's C.J. Gardner-Johnson's fault they lost that game, right? That's what people act like. It's completely ridiculous. C.J. Gardner-Johnson had a bad game. That happens. But he's a great player, and he's a valuable player, especially with the Lions being weak in the secondary. He can make an impact in the run and the pass game. Put him and Brian Branch in the slots. It's lockdown, man. It's lockdown.
So, in Booner, I just want to say this because I know you got your thoughts to get out here on CJ. I want to let Lukas cook there because I knew this was brewing. Like, I knew the CJ Gardner-Johnson talk was going to happen. And for me, like, I've been defending CJ. I know he didn't really play much this year because of course, an injury. So to even try and measure his success in Detroit, like during the regular season, like you can't look at stats. You just can't because like he didn't play majority of the season. So you really look at his playoff impact, and he was one of their worst players on Sunday. That is a fact.
Yeah,
like just
fact.
Like no one's arguing that. Yep, no one's going to deny that. But to say that his presence was invaluable before that, to me, would be ignorant, in my opinion. Like that would be. Now, how much does he ask for? I don't know. If you want to get him in another prove it year, I'm down with it. I'm cool with another prove it year. If he wants a long-term deal and thinks he deserves more money, then I'm probably saying no, thank you, because there's other players that I give money to. That's where I'm at with CJ. If he wants to come back, great. I'd welcome him back with open arms. You mentioned it and you nailed it, Lukas. The different packages that that Aaron Glenn likes to use, especially if he's back with multiple safeties on the field. Yeah, I want CJ Gardner-Johnson out there. He's a playmaker. Now, the talking and the antics, does it piss people off, fans off? Maybe. To me, I'm with you. I don't mind a dude like that. That's just how
No.
I mean, listen, I grew up watching, and I get it. It's different because that team won and had success. But a Rasheed Wallace, a guy who's going to talk that junk, I don't mind it. As long as it's resulting in, if you're backing it up with play, right? Like,
And he normally does. He
normally does. Now this season, it's hard to measure. I would bring him back, Booner. I don't know where you're at. If it's a 1-year deal, sign me up on a similar contract than what he had. I'm cool with it. I don't mind.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was months ago when he did the whole culture. There's something about CJ Gardner-Johnson and Lucas. I'm going to say this kind of the start of your rant there. At the end of the day, he was bad yesterday. He was he was not good. And you can, I mean, you brought up the stat. How many missed tackles do you have? 1. Shouldn't have had. You don't have any missed tackles in that game. Like, who cares? Right. Like, he played bad. That whole section you had there of your rant, you should throw that, toss in the garbage. Like, that doesn't matter. He was bad yesterday. People have a right to go at him from yesterday. People have a right to maybe even say, hey, maybe they don't want him back. They have a right to say that. But at the end of the day, that's all emotion, because guess what? When you're actually looking at your team, and Dan actually said it at the press conference today, is when you're looking at your football team for next year, you might love guys because you had a winning team. You might hate guys because they might have held back your team. But at the end of the day, you take emotions away when you're looking at the team. So yesterday, yes, he was bad. He was really bad. I think he was our lowest PFF graded player. He was really bad yesterday. And people can be mad. And I think people have the right to say whether they want or they do or not, like if they want him or not.
Absolutely.
So that is out of we could put that to the side. Now looking ahead. CJ Gardner-Johnson came in, and I don't know if you guys remember this in training camp. I'm sure 95% of the people who are commenting they don't want CJ Gardner-Johnson were saying at the beginning of the year in training camp, when he was very vocal, he was getting the team going, he was like the lead, he was the leader on this defense, the vocal leader. Everyone wanted him here. Just because there's recency bias of what happened in the wave doesn't mean that doesn't take away of everything that he has been in his past. Yes, he might have had some issues. Who cares? They know that. AG has known him. Hold on, Lucas. Hold on. Let me keep going. He has had issues. AG has known him since high school. AG knows the ways to go around with him. Everyone, like he knows that. I don't see what Adam said. Don't say everyone, please. No, 95%. I said Adam, not everyone. But with that being said, he was a vocal leader of this team. Guys like Kirby came out and said that CJ has helped Kirby Joseph get to that next level when it comes to being vocal and being that kind of that confidence level. Iffy has learned from him. When CJ Gardner-Johnson came back in the building, week 16, 17, go look at how the defense changed since then and how many turnovers they had. He was in the building talking, vocal. He is a vocal leader on this team, a guy that you want on this team. Go ahead, take him off, and then you don't have any vocal leader on your team. Let me see that. And I did see some comment. I know Adam said something about Jalen Ramsey. Who cares? What are we talking about? You have you have your culture foundation built. One guy isn't going to come in and change the whole thing and the wave. That let the man have some confidence. Why don't I have some confidence? Adam, you smoke hookah when you win. Stop doing that. Have some confidence out here. Let some people have some confidence on this football team, man. That's what you want. You want a little bit of an edge.
Lucas, I'll let you.
If we would have won, it would have been like, that's awesome. CJ did that.
Hold on.
What are we doing here?
So he played in 6 games this year. They've given up 400 total yards in 4 of them. What do you think happens when you have Mike Evans out there on Kindle Vildor? When you have Brandon Ayuk on Kindle Vildor? When you have Brandon Ayuk on Cam Sutton? Go look up how many of those yards were on the perimeter compared into the middle of the field where CJ Gardner, Brian Branch, all those safeties are. That is just
it is a great argument, Adam.
That is asinine.
Because guess what? If they won, you wouldn't say anything about him waving. You would have been like, "Oh,
no, he would have. Trust me."
No, and the thing is,
and then if he would have, it would have been a clown for that. Come on, what are we doing?
The other thing that drives me crazy about CJ Gardner-Johnson will be like, well, he's been on 3 teams in 3 years. So he was in New Orleans for I believe 3 seasons. Then he went to Philly, and then they fired the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator. And then look at where the locker room is at right now. Don't you think that he was probably like, oh, I see where this is going. Let me get the hell out of here. And he's on his 3rd team. So what? That doesn't take anything away from the player that he is. And it's not one of those locker rooms have not fallen apart since he's been there. When he was in New Orleans with Drew Brees, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, all those stars.
No, let me tell you something too. This came up a couple weeks ago. I was on a show and I brought this up. Go look at Philly fans about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Go look at what they were tweeting, because there's something that started going viral where they were saying, hey, who do you guys miss the most of that Super Bowl run team in that secondary? And every single Philly fan who hated on CJ Gardner-Johnson 365 days ago, do you guys remember that? All those Philly fans that were going at him?
I do.
Guess what they were doing 3 weeks ago when their secondary was struggling? And they didn't have any vocal leader on their defense. They had no one that would step up and talk. They had nothing. Guess what? All of them were putting out there in the world saying, we want CJ Gardner-Johnson back. His vocal leadership, the man he is. Yes, there's some things that he does, like wave to the crowd. Who cares about that, dude? Come on.
Well, pin Adam's comment real quick, Jeff. Real quick before you make your point.
I got you.
Adam, this man led the NFL, tied with Minkah Fitzpatrick's in interceptions last year in 12 games. 12 games.
It's a ball hawk, man.
Let's just be honest about CJ, and I'll share mine, at least with the comment about how many teams he's been on. Guys, he's been on what? The Saints, Eagles,
and Lions,
and the Lions. So that'd be 3.
Yeah,
he's been on 3 teams because of contractual reasons, right? Like the Saints didn't want to pay him, Eagles didn't want to pay him, and the Lions gave him a flyer deal. So here's
Eagles
my
wanted
thoughts.
To pay him. Eagles wanted to pay him.
Oh, they wanted to pay him, but they didn't meet his number.
Want to be in, that's why Eagles fans were so mad. They offered him a bag, and he's like, "Nah, I'm going to take the lower contract in Detroit."
Yeah, and so I don't think that speaks to like who he is as a human being. Like obviously Philly fans want him back. I'm sure the players will want him back. But the point I'm making is this: CJ Gardner-Johnson, he's not Jalen Ramsey. He's not a lockdown cover guy. He's a playmaker. That's why that's why him and Minkah being up there, and like obviously Minka's
he's way well rounded more.
Yes, but no one's saying CJ's this lockdown safety. What we're saying is, number one, what he brings vocally. Number 2,
huge vocal leader.
His playmaking, which you didn't really get to see this year. Let's not act like you can't bring up a pick and choose game. I mean, if you played a whole 17 game season or a majority of the season, you'd have an argument. But we really don't. We have to go off prior years, which it's pretty good data. Like I'll say, it's pretty good data producing.
The last 3 games, he's had 2 interceptions, but that does not matter.
And that's not act like he's the sole issue in the secondary, guys. Like, come on, if you had 2 better corners, would we be giving?
That was going to be my next point.
In the games he plays in,
if you had 2 just average, like decent corners,
if you have Kendall Vildor, Jerry Jacobs playing his worst ball of his career during that stretch, and Cam Sutton as a number 1 when he's really a 2, and you had no pass rush. Let's not forget early in the season, you didn't have much of a pass rush. So that didn't come around till late in the season when Hutchinson was finally on a fucking tear there. So there's a lot of things that go into it. I always say this, guys. People say football is a team game until it isn't.
Yeah.
That's what frustrates me. It's a team game until it makes people's arguments. I don't think there's people that agree with Adam, and that's fair. If you don't want him, cool. I'm on the side of I would take him back on a one-year proven deal.